This video is brought to you by Ground News. A Rwandan-backed rebel group known as M23 has captured Goma, the largest city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, sparking panic in the city of more than 1 million people and prompting a warning from the United Nations that the devastating and long-running conflict risks spiralling into a broader regional war. It's an often overlooked conflict, and one that's fueled by ethnic tension, regional rivalry, and resource extraction, all contributing to one of the most complex humanitarian crises in the world. So in this video, we're going to explain what's going on in the Eastern DRC, and why Rwanda is apparently stoking conflict there. Explore which world leaders are winning and which are losing every week with our new podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. For the people of the Eastern DRC, conflict is sadly nothing new. The region has been racked by conflict for more than 30 years. The prospect of M23 rebels taking Goma is also not new. M23, officially the March 23rd movement, is a predominantly ethnic Tutsi group that was formed in 2012 by former rebels that accused the Congolese government of failing to uphold a previous peace agreement to fully integrate Congolese Tutsis into the army. M23 launched a major rebellion in 2012, capturing swathes of territory and actually seizing control of Goma for more than a week, prompting international donors to cut aid to Rwanda because of its support for the group. And ultimately, M23's rebellion was suppressed by the Congolese army alongside UN forces. M23 lay dormant for nearly a decade before exploding back onto the scene in 2022, again backed by Rwanda, with a renewed insurgency against Congolese forces and its allied militias in the DRC's North Kivu province. Through this renewed insurgency, the group has once again captured large swathes of territory in the southern part of North Kivu, with fighting displacing a huge number of people. The DRC's eastern provinces of South Kivu and North Kivu are home to more than 4.6 million internally displaced people, and since the beginning of 2025 alone, intensifying violence has displaced more than 400,000 people in the eastern DRC. The intensity of the insurgency has fluctuated over the last couple of years, and more than half a dozen attempted ceasefires and truces have fallen through, the most recent in summer last year. Since the beginning of this year, though, M23 has made significant territorial gains, leaving the rebels in control of more territory than ever before. Through January, the group captured a series of key towns en route into Goma, leaving the city effectively encircled by the end of last week, with M23 to the north and west, the Rwandan border to the east, and Lake Kivu to the south. In response to M23 publicly saying it aimed to capture Goma, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights warned that any attack on the city risks catastrophic impacts on hundreds of thousands of civilians, putting them at heightened exposure to human rights violations and abuses. For reference, Goma is a regional hub for humanitarian, security and diplomatic efforts, and has been a refuge for more than 1 million civilians, who have already fled from violence in the region. The situation continued to escalate towards the end of last week, when at least 13 foreign peacekeepers were killed in clashes with M23 near Goma. Some were part of the UN's peacekeeping mission, which has been present in the DRC for decades, while others were part of a regional force deployed by the Southern African Development Community in late 2023. Amid the intensifying violence, it was also announced that the Congolese military governor of North Kivu province was killed when visiting the front line. Against this backdrop, the Congolese government announced last week that it was severing its strained diplomatic ties with Rwanda because of the latter's support for M23. As of Monday morning, the picture was not fully clear, but M23 claimed it had captured Goma. Now, Rwanda publicly denies supporting M23, but the accusation doesn't come from just the DRC. It comes from the UN, EU, US, and others too. In fact, calling M23 a Rwandan-backed group may not even fully reflect the extent of Rwanda's support, which goes beyond funding, training, and equipping. UN experts say Rwanda has up to 4,000 troops on the ground in the eastern DRC, and that the Rwandan military has de facto control over M23 operations, with the commanding of targeted operations and handling of high-tech weaponry by Rwanda critical in M23's conquering of new territories. So why is Rwanda intent on backing M23? Well, it can largely be summed up as economic interest and political and security interests. On the economic front, it's a well-known fact that the eastern DRC is rich with natural resources: gold, tin, tungsten, tantalum, coltan, and more. Valuable and crucial materials used for things like batteries, circuit boards, capacitors, and all sorts of electronic devices. For more than a year now, M23 has controlled the largely coltan mining region of Rwanda in North Kivu, which, according to the UN, has allowed them to collect an estimated $800,000 a month through a production and trade tax. The UN expert's report states that M23 has, quote, ensured a monopoly for the export of coltan from Rwanda to Rwanda, meaning fraudulent extraction, trade and export to Rwanda of minerals benefits both M23 and the Rwandan economy. Rwanda also has political and security interests in the DRC going back decades. In fact, Rwanda, alongside some other countries, twice invaded the DRC in the late 1990s, citing security threats. The Rwandan government has long spoken of threats to its own security by militias present in the neighbouring DRC, like the ethnic Hutu FDLR, whose members include alleged perpetrators of the 1994 Rwandan genocide. This is a key cause of tension between the DRC and Rwanda, as the Congolese military has relied upon and provided support to armed groups like the FDLR to aid its fight against the likes of M23. Some analysts also see the resurgence of M23 as a response by Rwanda to its regional rival Uganda's increasing involvement in what Rwanda considers its own sphere of influence. For example, in 2021, the DRC allowed Ugandan troops to deploy in northeastern DRC to help the Congolese military fight against the so-called Allied Democratic Forces, an IS affiliate. Additionally, the DRC and Uganda have signed agreements to build networks of road linking the two neighbouring countries, which may have raised fears in Rwanda of being shut out of the resource-rich area to the benefit of its rival. As for why M23 intensified its offensive since the start of this year, some analysts see it as an effort by Rwanda to maximise its position in currently suspended negotiations after Angolan-led peace talks between the DRC and Rwanda collapsed in December 2024. At an emergency UN Security Council meeting on Sunday, the US, UK and France did condemn Rwanda's actions and call for its withdrawal, but stopped short of calling for sanctions. Given that Rwanda's longtime leader Paul Kagame has built a strong reputation for himself and his country as a key partner of the global, particularly Western community, it may be hard to generate the same international pressure that helped end M23's last rebellion more than a decade ago. Following this story, unpacking different perspectives and opinions has proved to be really difficult. But if you want to keep exploring this topic, you'll find it easier with the help of Ground News. Thankfully, there's Ground News, a website and app developed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news. They pull in stories from all over the world and organise them by story, and every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality and ownership of all the sources reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organisations. For example, here's a story about UN Chief Antonio Guterres calling for Rwandan forces to leave Congo. Right away, you can see that the story had 142 outlets reporting on it, with 42% leaning left and 29% leaning right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. You can also swipe through some of the headlines to get a more detailed understanding of how reporting might change based on political bias. One of my favourite features of theirs is My News Bias. It's basically a fitness tracker, but for news. It tracks my reading habits over time, my trends in political bias, the specific news outlets I read the most, even the specific topics I gravitate towards. It's been really helpful in minimising my personal blind spots. Now, as an impartial news outlet, we're passionate about informing our viewers about bias and helping them to understand how it affects the media they consume. Ground News is very effective at this, showing you exactly how each side of the political divide covers each story you see online. And best of all, we're currently offering viewers 40% off their Vantage plan, which includes unlimited access to all of their amazing features like their blind spot feed. So go to ground.news/TLDR, click the QR code here on screen, or use the link in the description to subscribe today.